Okay, thanks again for tuning in on our session of prayer, Q&A, updates, some Bible study. Today, actually, I'm going to talk about a chapter that is pretty famous for Christians. If you're Jewish, then you're not necessarily very familiar with it. It's not in what we call the Haftarah. It's Isaiah 52, 53. And this will be an interesting study. So I'm going to start with our prayers, and then we'll move forward to the updates. And again, of course, if you have questions at any point, I mean, there will be a few points that I open it, so you can ask your questions, of course, on the situation, whatever's on your mind. Oh, I didn't change the date. Let's change the date. It's already the 16th. So this is a picture I took earlier of my son Tavo. The alarm went off earlier. I think it was like what 5 or 6 p.m. Israel time. There were a few rockets launched towards Jerusalem. We heard 2 booms, not very far from where we are. It was intercepted, I guess, by Iron Dome. There was no damage or anything like that. And some of the remains of the rockets actually landed in the old city. We have a few photos that it landed. No damage really, just a little bit of some pieces of rockets, but nothing. No one was hurt or anything like that. So this is Tavo at the shelter. We wanted to keep him busy, so we played with our water bottles over there, and he was painting, as you can see. So that's something that happened before, and just wanted to share a spontaneous picture of it. So we're praying for those who were kidnapped. Yesterday I showed you a smaller version of it, just a few of the names. I think it was a couple of dozens of the names. This is a more updated picture of the people that, as far as we are aware of, were kidnapped into Gaza. So we're praying for them, for their safety, for their well-being, and we're praying for the ascension of the souls of those who were killed in this terrible massacre. And we're praying for those who were injured to be better, and God will give them refuah shlema, complete health. And we're praying for our soldiers that will prevail. And we want to start with we're praying for these kind of people, family of Scott's family, 2 boys, 1 girl, and 2 parents were killed in Kfar Aza. So just entire families were wiped. Some families were killed, some families were kidnapped as a whole. I think I mentioned that before. I know a woman that was kidnapped. I know a friend of mine, 3 of his nephews were kidnapped. I have a neighbor that I think 5, or I think, if I remember correctly, it's 5 of her family members were kidnapped. She's not a personal friend, but a woman that I'm familiar with from the neighborhood. So it's really a whole tragedy, and it really touches the lives of many, many, many Israelis. Over here, you can see this mother and daughter. They were the father too. They were all kidnapped into Gaza, and somehow they managed to jump and escape the vehicle. And only the father and the daughter managed to escape completely, and the mother Yarden was perhaps kidnapped into Gaza. We're not sure. So this is Yarden, and that's her daughter Geffen. So these are the people that we are praying for. So we're going to read the Psalm chapter 8. I'm going to read it in Hebrew. למנצח על הגיתית מזמור לדוד, אדוני אדוננו מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ, אשר תנה הודיך על השמיים, מפי עוללים ויונקים יישא תעוז, למען צורריך להשבית אויב ומתנקם. כי יראה שמך מעשה אצבעותיך, ירח וכוכבים אשר כוננת, מה אנוש כי תזכרנו, ובן אדם כי תפקדנו, ותחסרהו מעט מאלוהים, בכבוד והדר תעטרהו, תמשילהו במעשה ידיך, כל שטה תחת רגליו, צונה ואלפים כולם, וגם בהמות שדי, ציפור שמיים ודגי הים, עובר אורחות ימים, אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ. Yesterday I showed you and I read the prayer for the soldiers. It's a prayer that in many synagogues throughout Israel, I think that most of them, they're saying this prayer for the state of Israel. There's another prayer for the soldiers. So we say this blessing or short prayer as we are about to read from the Torah. So I'm going to read it this time in Hebrew. This is the English version, but I'm going to read it in Hebrew. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו, מגבול הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים, ומן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה, ביבשה באוויר ובים. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו, ניגפים לפניהם, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם, ויעטרם בכתר ישועה ועטרת ניצחון, יקוים בהם הכתוב, כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם, להילחם לכם עם אויביכם, להושיע אתכם, ונאמר אמן. Okay. If any of you wants to add a prayer or say something regarding that, you're welcome. And before the updates, I'll be happy if you want to ask anything, then you're welcome. Don't be shy. And if not, then of course we'll have more opportunities. And I'm just doing these little breaks because I just assume that some people will have to leave. So it's okay if you have to leave, of course. I just don't want to leave you without the opportunity to ask your questions. Okay. I wanted to say something about things that we say on these days, very common kind of greetings. It's strange to call that greetings, but in the interactions between Israelis right now, there is a common way that we say goodbye right now. We say bsorot tovot. That's what you see here in the English. Bsorot tovot means may we hear good news. May we hear good news. Bsorot tovot. So we usually do that when we hear bad things and we have a conversation and there are all kinds of bad things happen that we hear about, and we don't want to finish with like bitter taste, and we say, okay, well, let's hope to have some good news. So bsorot tovot, this is something very common. You'll hear all the Israelis saying right now. The word bsorah means news or gospel. It actually means gospel. It's very common to the translation of the gospel is actually bsorah. So in the New Testament, for example, the Gospel of Matthew or the book of Matthew is habsorah according to Matthew. So this is a very common word in the context of Jews or Hebrew speakers talking about Christianity. So, but of course we use it for our greetings as well. So just so you know, it's a very famous word in both contexts. Then we have another thing, and this is a post that I found on Facebook from a woman that I'm familiar with. She had a terrible incident in her family, and she basically lost her brother, and she was writing a lot about the grief over her brother. Again, nothing to do with, it's like a year ago almost, nothing to do with the current situation, but her grief, of course, she gave it publicity on Facebook, etc. And when we go and visit the mourners of the family that mourns for her dead. It's called Shiva. Okay, the 7 days of mourning. It's called Shiva. Then one of the ways to greet the mourners is that you shall not know more sorrow. Okay, you shall not know more sorrow. So she kind of changed that, and she tried to explain because of her grief, private grief over her brother. She said, "You shall not know only sorrow." Where she says, when you lose someone that you're connected to, you just know you're entering life of sorrow. You're entering these gates of sorrow, and the blessing, in her opinion, should be that you should not know only sorrow, that you will know some days of happiness or a little more like mild sadness in a way. So this is her take on it, and found it very moving. So I kind of want you to be familiar with the discourse going on in Israel, and these are the type of things that you won't see on the news, and that's kind of the thing that I want you to be familiar with the Israeli society in a way in these hard times. This is from earlier today. I visited my cousin in Jerusalem, and she has 5 kids, and they were packing psalms. What you see here on the left picture is small psalm books, kind of like what I have right here. Okay, so that's the one I read from. So this is just the book of Psalms, not the entire Bible, just the 150 Psalms. And they packed it for the soldiers, and they're gonna give it to them with these little challah breads. And that's what you see here. She's a baker and all that, so she decided to do this for the soldiers. On the streets of Jerusalem, I've seen many buildings in other cities as well. You'll see all kinds of banners and flags and all kinds of artwork of teenagers, I guess, in some cases, or children. So it says over here, "Thank you, soldiers." Some soldiers were recruited earlier this week. Sorry, I'm kind of losing track. They recruited last week on the 7th and the 8th and 9th of October. And some of them already managed to visit their families, and they will go back to their service like in a day or two. So when they come back, they see these banners throughout the city. Again, not just this is in Jerusalem, but not just here. So this is a way for the civilians to greet their family members that are in the reserve right now. Another friend of mine took this picture earlier today in I'm not sure exactly where he took it. He said it's from the area near Sderot somewhere, near like the Gaza envelope area. And it says over here in Hebrew something like Autumn Festival. Okay, the Autumn Festivals. And these are tours and biking and this and that. And the dates are just mind-boggling. Again, this is the days of Sukkot, basically, from the 1st to the 7th of October. 7th of October, of course, that's the Saturday in which this massacre took place. So the signs are still there, you see. So just very tragic. Yesterday I was talking about the ultra-Orthodox. I mentioned an officer that was visiting a very famous, very famous, prominent yeshiva called Hebron Yeshiva. He was talking with the yeshiva students about their obligation to the people of Israel, their obligation to the nation of Israel, and what is happening right now. And he said, maybe you cannot serve. For example, he said you cannot serve right now because you're not trained soldiers, but you can and you should pray for the soldiers. You can and should visit the cemeteries and go to funerals and go to shivas. Again, shiva meaning visit the mourners wherever you live. I think here he marks 2. He says something like at least visit 2 funerals. I think it was something like that. So I mentioned that yesterday, and today it was very interesting to see that over 3,000 ultra-Orthodox, I think they're closer to the age of 30, submitted an application to join the reserve, to be a reserve soldier, in all kinds of specific units. It's not like they're going to be combat soldiers today, but they 3,000 ultra-Orthodox around the age of 30, they decided to join the Israeli army as a reservists. This picture on the right, what you see here, is a call of these rabbis for a special prayer at the Western Wall. I think it took place today, actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it took place today. So this picture I took in Bnei Brak, which is a very, very ultra-Orthodox city. They don't explicitly say that there is war. They say, because of the difficult situation, we will do 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do this prayer. But there is, in a way, they're trying to keep their community in some kind of a bubble. There is a bad situation. Of course, they maybe between themselves they know exactly what's happening, but they don't give it the same publicity. They don't use the same language that other Israelis use. But what I see here is, again, the solidarity here that is happening. Okay, I just see something on the chat. Let me see. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Don't worry about. Okay. On Saturday, you said in a post that people should write your politicians, let Israel finish the job. What would that still be helpful for Americans to do? Our politicians are really showing for Israel. I wanted to make sure. Okay, so one of the problems that Israel has in many wars, it's not something new, is that there is always like a stopwatch on Israeli military actions. It almost seems like different superpowers, historically speaking, not 48, 56, 67, 73, and so on and so forth. There's always like superpowers that kind of want to limit the military success of the Israeli army. Okay, so one of them, we already see, just a few, I think it was a couple of days ago, we learned that Putin already trying to move things around in the UN, so the Security Council will decide to kind of stop the Israeli army from moving forward with the ground attack, etc., etc. So these are the kind of things that are not helping the situation, because what it basically forces Israel to capitulate and to not complete the job, in the sense that completely demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, for example, okay, killing enough terrorists in order to make sure that we don't have another round of violence a year from now or 2 years from now. Okay, so that's what I meant when I said what I said. Israel needs the time to collapse the terror state that is called the Gaza Strip, and it's a de facto state ran by terror organizations like Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, mainly Hamas, and it just can't be there. In a way, it should be the last Gaza war, and I can elaborate more about it later. Okay, over here, I wanted to share with you the thoughts of a friend of mine. She's a tour guide too, and she wrote a post that I actually had these kind of thoughts running in my head, but she expressed that very interestingly. So I'm just translating. In the day after the war, what should we tell our tourists about the thousands of years of history of the Jewish people, while the entire history folded to one cursed Saturday, October 7th? Should we speak about the challenge to Abraham when he wanted to bind his only son, when so many babies were binded and killed and kidnapped on that day? How can we speak about the bravery of the rebels of Masada when there are thousands of heroic story that I'm still trying to learn? How can we say that Masada shall not fall once more when so many kibbutzes, so many kibbutzim, these communities fell bleeding by these beasts, by these terrorists, basically? How can we remember all their names? When we visit Mount Herzl, which is a very famous military cemetery, how can we speak about just one soldier and give up the others? How can we speak about one family that was killed? It's a famous, horrific terror attack that took place a few years ago. The Fogel family was murdered by terrorists a few years ago. Now we have so many Fogel families. How can we speak about the atrocities of the Holocaust when we thought it's happening on some other time, in some other land, when now we see all these atrocities happening in real time on this soil? How can I okay, let's give that up. How can we explain the destruction of our temple or our house that happened on that Saturday? That Holocaust happened on that Saturday. That the binding of Isaac happened on that Saturday. That Masada fell on that Saturday. On the day after the war, how can we explain to tourists about our thousands of years of history when it all folded to one Saturday? So these are the thoughts that we have. In a way, as tour guides, we kind of hold through our stories, we kind of hold the memory. We're like memory creators of what is getting publicity. So it's one thing that, there's knowledge in books, in the academy, and all that, and there's other thing, what is being popularized, and usually it's being popularized by songs, by musicians, by artists, and by tour guides. See, so these are the stories that become famous because enough people are talking about it. So how can we talk about any of our history when it already happened in one day? So I just want to share that thought on the professional level. Again, I share her thoughts. Yesterday I showed to you the papers that the IDF spread throughout Gaza Strip, in northern part of Gaza Strip, calling the civilians to leave, and oppose the exact opposite for it is the paper of the terrorists that attacked. Specifically here, it's the one on the left is a kibbutz called Alumim, and that actually says that you should inflict as much casualties and capture as many prisoners as possible. Today we're being told that they found another paper of these of the terrorists. It's like a little dictionary for a terrorist for this attack. Okay, so it says the Arabic is here on the right, and the way to say that in Hebrew phonetically it's written on the left. It specifically says that we will kill the hostages, we will do this, we will do that. Where are the women? Where are the children? So horrific. Okay, I read it in Arabic. It's just wow, like, unreal. So as you see, and you'll already see the propaganda on your social media or news that Hamas is like trying to play it as if no, we didn't want to harm civilians. It's very explicit that they definitely want to harm civilians. It's like obvious. It's just ridiculous to take this propaganda seriously. So that's just another example for that. There's a lot of myself and many of other tour guides that are busy with busy explaining Israel in a way on our daily basis. Now we're kind of caught, so many of us caught in this situation that we're trying to explain Israel online as well. So these are just a few of things that I want to share with you. Nobody said on 9/11, I support both sides. Okay, I support the Israelis, I support the Palestinians, I support the Americans, I support the Afghani or Al Qaeda. No one is saying that. So of course in Israel there's an exception, and these are the type of things that we're trying to battle. The West is next. I think that since 9/11, it's already pretty obvious, but some people need the reminder. And before we move to our Bible study, I want to open it again for questions. I heard that U.S. made Israel turn water back on in Gaza. I think in the south of Gaza, because there are a lot of refugees fleeing to the southern part of Gaza. They allow the water supply to go there in order to avoid humanitarian crisis. These are the type of things that in the Israeli debate, the Israeli discourse, you would hear, and I mean, just think about it. It's like a total war, what's going on right now. Just think about Britain supplying Dresden with water and electricity. It just makes no sense. Okay? So this is, if you want to defeat your enemy, then you have to put pressure in every way possible in order to make it collapse, and that's it. So of course it's not nice to see civilians getting hit, but these kind of actions, like supplying water to the refugees in the southern part of Gaza, it just prolongs the entire campaign. It doesn't really help. Okay, so it doesn't make sense in any way. It doesn't make sense. Okay? Not militarily and not from a human rights perspective, because it's just it will increase and it will prolong the suffering way more. Also, when again, it's a total war. It's not a game. It's not one of our little operations that were going on in the last 10, 15 years with Gaza. Okay, a few days here, a few days there, a few weeks here. It's nothing like that. Okay, we're talking about all-out war with Hamas and with these terror groups, with de facto state. Really, it's a de facto state. You have to put that in mind. I know it sounds very strange, but Gaza is de facto state. They have a territory. They have civilians. They have running government since 2007. They have military. It's de facto state. And when you are in all-out war with another state, you're not trying to make it easy on them. You're trying to make them collapse as fast as possible. And this actually what's supposed to minimize the casualties, not increase the casualties. So this is something to think about. But that's again what's happening at the moment. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
I heard that only 7% of the water was being controlled by Israel, and that Hamas has water, they have electricity in their tunnels, and they have plenty of food. So unfortunately, I think the word is getting out that they're the ones that are diverting it. They're the ones that are preventing people from leaving. It's not the Israelis. And I'm happy to see that Blinken is back in Israel again today. And my understanding from another news report is that President Biden is supposed to be making a visit there shortly. I'm not sure what day, but the United States, he is extremely firm that we are not going to let you do this alone.
Yeah.
And I also heard that they had cruise ships there and they were exporting the American citizens by any means possible. So you have our support.
I know, and I thank Joe Biden several times on these sessions and on Facebook. It's in the support of the American people. It's for us, it's the biggest blessing. I will also say that about the water in Gaza Strip has to be desalinated. So the aquifer is too salty. It's salty because they pump too much and just they got the actual seawater into their aquifer. That's the situation for many years now. It's not new. So they have to purify the water, and only then they can drink it. So Israel does supply a very small amount of the water. Like you said, something 7%, 10%, that sounds about right. But it's not like they can drink directly from the wells. They still have to use their desalination plants. But that's for the peasant. Okay. As far as the military branch concerned, they are in 5 stars hotel underground. Okay, meaning they have all they need, whether it's medicine, generators. They have their own world going on. Uh, I think it was, not sure on which. I've seen some reports, but I'm not sure which channel was it. But uh, I think it's just from the UK. People were asking, there's not enough electricity for the hospitals. Okay, that's, I think the host was asking someone, and he answered whatever he answered. But of course, Israel doesn't have to take care of their civilians of the enemy when we are in all-out war. But the question is, why does the hospitals don't have their own generators? Like, where the money goes? Okay, where did the money that Gaza got as an aid from, I'm not sure how many donating countries, why don't the hospitals have generators? Shouldn't be a problem, because every hospital has a generator. So these are the type of things that we just not necessarily thinking about. So yeah, as far as infrastructure concerned, all the all the money basically went to the terror tunnels and the terror organization and military branch of Hamas, and very little to the people. So these are the type of things. I mean, again, they're not taking care of their own civilians, so I don't see any reason to be merciful for these people more than they are. Yeah, go ahead, Manuela. You wanted to ask something? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Mark. I appreciate you having these meetings. Haven't logged into one since last week, but you said something very interesting about a week ago in one of your early meetings about the facade of the border stations separating Gaza from Israel and all these battalion stations that have been lined up. And someone sent me an article from the New York Times about the intelligence that Hamas had as part of their operation. This was a definitely pre-planned operation, and it shows pictures of Hamas leadership with detailed little maps of where to go once they crossed into the Israeli territory. And they even found maps to pictures of Hamas leaders looking at an intelligence map of where the intelligence hub was for the Israel army. And so they went directly to that spot and killed several soldiers that were part of that intelligence hub. And it certainly sounds like to me that Hamas had a lot of inside information about exactly where to go and how to take advantage of it. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that, about the spy networks or whatever. I'm not sure about that, but one thing you did mention that, what are they lying 20 to 30,000 Gazans into Israel on a daily basis during the work week to work. And of course, it only takes one or two with an ulterior motive to map out strategic locations. I don't know if you had any thoughts on all that.
Yeah. So as far as like inside information from the actual soldiers, this is a conspiracy theory as far as I'm concerned. It's like, it's just not true. I really, really doubt it. Okay. As far as the workers, yes, like the workers, this was the kind of things that when it was the former government that actually started that. They wanted to give some kind of prospect and financial trajectory to the Gaza Strip, and said, okay, so we allow an incentive to basically, avoid terror, and if you start terror, then we'll have to attack you. But if you don't, then we can help you financially. So the former government started that, and Netanyahu actually increased it, or was about to increase it, the number of Gazans that will work in Israel itself. So when they wanted to start that, I was like, really? Like, these people are going to work for Hamas. Like there is no chance. This way or the other, they are going to give some of the money to Hamas, which is true. Like I think it was 10% of their income was going to Hamas. The other thing is that they are like eyes in the field. They will know the kibbutzes very well. They will know how the military goes back and forth, back and forth. They're working in different fields or working in different areas, and they're driving back and forward. So they'll be familiar with it. Now, I don't have, I am not in the army right now. Okay, so it's not like I'm exposed to any secret documents or anything like that. But it's pretty obvious that many of the people that worked, or enough people that worked in Israel, were informers of Hamas, this way or the other. Even if they're just random people, just know, okay, how many jeeps did you see patrolling here? How many armed people have you seen while working in the kibbutz for the last 2 weeks? Okay, this type of information is, or intelligence is used for military use. So I would rely more. I think this is what actually helped them a lot. Other things that I've seen on their intelligence is what we call it's just available online, whether it's Google Earth, whether it's just checking what's going on in the kibbutz and what is this building, what is that building. It's just available online. It's not like they need to be super smart or need some inside job. None of that. So yeah, at least again, as far as what I've seen that they had. Okay. Mark, any other question?
Well, I think you're probably right. Just there's many means to gather intelligence, and one thing is for sure that Israel has had to keep a large part of their forces in the occupied West Bank. I'm sorry, I don't want to use that term, but that's what it's called. I don't agree with that term, but let me just say the West Bank. So quite a bit of the IDF forces were probably focused on those areas to protect the Israeli kibbutzes that have been set up in those areas. But so when you have several hours for Israel to respond to what was going on along the Gaza border a week ago Saturday, it appears that, as you mentioned, the facade of security with all these battalion stations there was really no one there. There was not large forces of IDF forces that could come in right away to protect the Israeli citizenship. And so it seems to me that you have this attitude, a very complacent attitude, thinking, well, we can protect you from the Iron Dome. But they were not really prepared to prevent a serious ground attack against civilians, and having adequate army battalions nearby. And I can understand that after years and years and years, you can get quite complacent. So I don't know if your thoughts on that. What do you think?
Okay, so two things. One, there's a lot of things that I just don't know exactly what happened that day. I mean, I'm waiting for more reliable reports and more detailed reports about like what was going on over there. So at the moment, I'm just silent about it. There are other things that let's say you have less battalions on that Saturday. As commander of the Southern Front, okay, you know that you have less battalions over there because you're busy with the West Bank for whatever reason, okay? You still can compensate on that by doing multiple other things. There are many other things that they could do in order to make sure that if, God forbid, ground attack like that happens, they can still respond to that. There are many ways to compensate that. Just a few examples, okay? Israel have all kinds of drones. Israel could use the battalions that are there and say, okay, we don't have enough people, so we're gonna prolong the shifts, and more of the combat soldiers will be awake, especially on dawn break, for example. It's like just basic things. I remember that On basic training, you learn that attacks on dawnbreak. This is just the most basic things you learn when you enter the army. So being having more soldiers up and ready between, I don't know, 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. Basic stuff. Getting the helicopters, the Apache and the other combat helicopters, not an hour away from you, but 5 minutes away from you. There are Air Force bases very close to the Gaza area, like that could reach there in 10 minutes instead of 20 or 30 minutes, okay? These kind of things that can compensate on that. So even if there was a intelligence failure, but there's also a kind of preparation, basic preparation to compensate on the battalions that are now in the West Bank. There are many other things that it can do, okay? So again, it was a failure in many levels, and this will be talked over and over again in the future. So right now I don't have the details, but I just didn't want to leave you without a basic answer. So that's just a thought, okay? Okay, so Chris is asking, honest question, how would lack of water and food and medicine shorten the war in practical details? Would people rebel against Hamas when they would not get those goods? No, Chris, when you fight another, it's when there's total war and you have humanitarian crisis on the opposite side. It's one of those things that are in the consideration of the leaders. How exactly they respond to that? There are many ways to respond to that, but it definitely doesn't help them with their war efforts. They just have to take it into consideration. So how exactly they respond to that, that's the one thing that you don't know. But you definitely don't want to make their life easier. See? So that's my answer. Why doesn't every country who needs billions of dollars in foreign aid demand accountability? Oh, that kind of doesn't. There are billions since 2014. That was the Protective Edge. That was the last serious operation that really demolished half the Gaza Strip. So for the last 9 years, many billions of dollars were thrown at the Gaza Strip in order to rehabilitate it and make it livable again. And I really doubt that any country with a sane mind will put any dollar on the Gaza Strip after what we just saw. Meaning, why would anyone invest $1 in the Gaza Strip after they saw what was the money used for in the last 9 years? People could say whatever they want. Oh, the poor people, we need to help them. Okay, but the entire, like, you send your dollars and it all goes to terror tunnels and whatever. So it's really up to you, the citizens of these countries, to speak up. What happens to your water initiative? It's in the West Bank. It's not in the Gaza Strip. That you told, yeah. Justine is referring to an initiative I was involved in. You can find it online. It's called the Initiative to Shrink the Conflict, but it's not about Gaza. It's only about the West Bank. I guess I will have to have a session that will discuss that, this initiative. I'll write it down. It's, I think, the second time that I'm considering maybe doing that. So again, it's called the Initiative to Shrink the Conflict, and you can find some information about it online. Okay. Any other questions you have before we move?
Itamar, can I ask you something, please? It's Risa.
Yeah, Risa.
And I Google and I research and I still am confused. Shin Bet is internal security, is that correct?
They used to call it Shin Bet, now it's just called Shabak. The general, it's like I guess the feds in America.
Okay, Canada
Home
doesn't
security.
have those.
Home security.
We're useless. Yeah. Homeland security
Homeland
in the
security.
United States.
Correct.
Okay. So because
unlike the Mossad is like the CIA.
Unlike it's exterior, right? Like CIA.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, because I got an update through Weitzel saying that the Shin Bet chief agrees that the failure to foil the attack was his.
Again, it's not exclusively his, but the chief of
His,
staff
but
said that, and then the correct, yes.
right? Okay.
He said that too, yeah. Again, they are taking responsibility. The commanders of these organizations are taking responsibility. And in the interior discourse of Israel, is like everyone is looking at the prime minister. Mr. Netanyahu, when will you take responsibility for what happened? So
No.
anyway, and
No.
of course not. But
No.
I'm just letting you know it's in the discourse. I didn't want to talk about it right
Okay,
like today.
so
I spoke
then
about it in
talk
the
it.
past, the inner criticism against Netanyahu and the government.
No,
I will probably get to it in the future. There was no real news
right
about
now.
it.
It's not proactive and it doesn't serve any purpose.
I don't know if it's proactive or not. I mentioned that again a few days ago that many Israelis think that the very fact that this government that led us to this crisis is running the country is just
horrible.
Just horrific. You know, I mean, this is
Yeah.
the worst thing that could happen is that the people on the wheel will keep leading, you know, this military operation and its objectives, etc. So it's not like it's in the discourse, of course. I didn't speak about it on this session, but I spoke about it in the past.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to try and do something a bit challenging. Again, speaking about a very famous, we're entering our Bible study session. So I want to start with a video I made about Jerusalem. It's about 2 minutes video. And then I want to read these passages from Isaiah. Okay. So let's start by that. You're supposed to hear, you're supposed to have, there's audio too, okay? So let's try and see that it's working.
Why do people go crazy in Jerusalem? Subscribe and let's find out. From one point on the Temple Mount, you can see the holiest place for Jews, that's the Dome of the Rock. You can see the holiest church in the world, that's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And you can also see the third holiest mosque in the world, that is Al-Aqsa Mosque. When you stand at Jaffa Gate Plaza, you can see the flag of the Vatican at the Latin Patriarchate and an Ottoman mosque on the opposite side with Israeli flags flying everywhere. The Tower of the Citadel was built by the Jewish King Herod, the Christian Crusader kings, and the Muslim Mamluks. At the entrance to the Room of the Last Supper, which is clearly a Christian tradition, you'll see an Arabic Muslim inscription indicating the place was used as a mosque for centuries. Since 1948, Israel added a Jewish mezuzah to the door. In Jerusalem, you can pay a visit to the traditional tomb of King David, which is considered to be the Jewish Messiah, the ancestor of Jesus, and a Muslim prophet. At the main plaza of the Jewish quarter, you'll see a Jewish synagogue, a minaret of a mosque, and a Christian chapel. At the heart of the Muslim quarter, you'll see the Catholic Via Dolorosa, the Austrian guest house and church, the Jewish menorah and the Israeli flags, as about 1,000 Jews live in the Muslim quarter, and of course a Muslim minaret. At the Arab souk you can find a Christian stall, a Jewish prayer shawl called talit, and an Arabic Muslim kafia. East of the Old City, at the Mount of Olives, we have Jewish, Christian, and Muslim cemeteries. All are waiting for the Messiah, the resurrection, and the Day of Judgment. Even our stuffed animals aren't that innocent. This sheep could represent the ram of Isaac, the lamb of God, or the lamb of Ishmael. So that's why people get crazy here. Follow for more.
Okay, so Jerusalem has all the important traditions of the monotheistic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I want to read Isaiah 52-53 in this context. Okay, so just share my presentation again. Okay, here it is. Okay, so when Christianity came to power in Rome, that's in the 4th century, the Jews already lost their sovereignty over Judea a few centuries earlier. Okay, so there was never a moment in time that the Jews had sovereign power and statehood, while Christianity and later Islam is dominant. When there is Christian empire and later Muslim empires, they never encountered the situation of a Jewish independence. Okay, when you think about the Jewish states, historically speaking, okay, the first one was of King Saul and David and Solomon 3,000 years ago. Then again, by the days of the Maccabees, vis-a-vis the Greek Empire, again, when it was a pagan empire, there was no Christianity yet, of course. And then that's it. Rome destroyed Jerusalem, the Jews were exiled, and there was no moment until 1948 that either a Christian country or empire, or either a Muslim country or empire, encountered a Jewish state, right? Until again 1948. And when in 1948 Israel was established, it raised a lot of eyebrows, because these are like the type of things that are really mentioned in the Bible, all of the prophetic section of the Bible, that the Jews will be gathered, and it raised a lot of questions, theological questions for Muslims, for Christians, of course. And I would say that as far as the Christians are concerned, the Holocaust was an important moment, because the Holocaust happened in Christian countries. As far as Islam concerned, it was not, let's say, Jews were tolerable. Okay, they were second-class citizens, but it was a much more friendly place to be. Okay, compared to the different Christian states of and empires of Europe. Then 1948 happened, and a lot of hostility that is in the books, okay, in the holy books of Islam, whether it's the Quran or the Hadith, all these traditions became alive, okay, and became more relevant. Because until then, okay, the Jews are like second-class citizens, no one paid too much attention. Once Israel was established, and this is going on for many years, it actually goes prior to 1948, Muslim thinkers had to deal with Zionism, but later they had to deal with the outcome of Zionism, which is the state of Israel. So let's just put the historical context in mind, and now let's start and read it. Oh, I see that my son woke up, so in the middle of the night he likes to wake up and play with us. So let's see how long I can hold it. Anyway, Isaiah 52 and 53. It's I just remind you, it's these are scrolls, and all this division to chapters and all that. This came way later, so that's the segment that speaks about the servant. Okay, there are in Isaiah there are a few servant songs. I think it's 4 servant songs, but the servant in the Jewish reading and the Jewish thought is the people of Israel. Eved Hashem, the slave of God or the servant of God. There's a famous passage in Isaiah 43 that says that God is saying, I'm just translating it, it says something like that, you are my witnesses, okay, declares the Lord, or the speech of God, the servant whom I have chosen. Okay, now you are my witnesses. It's plural. It's pretty obvious. When he speaks about a servant, he's not speaking about an individual. He speaks about a people. Okay, so it's just the language of Isaiah. Okay, so that's the context in which I'm reading it. So let's start. See, my servant will act wisely. He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted, just as there were many who were appalled at him. His appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any human being, and his form marred beyond human likeness. He was The servant doesn't look like a human even. So he will sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. All of a sudden, something happened to that servant, and kings are like holding their mouth shut, and they're just amazed about what happened to him. For what they were not told, they will see, and what they have not heard, they will understand. So again, the kings are amazed. What happened to that servant? We just thought it's just a poor guy that is disfigured. Just think about the people of Israel after the Holocaust. 3 years after the Holocaust, the state of Israel is established. And then Isaiah is putting words in the mouths of these kings. So let's see what he says. Who has believed our message, or a report? I saw some translations. Who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Okay, so under different Christian empires and Muslim empires or states, the Jews were always inferior, in some cases persecuted. And all of a sudden, something happened in 1948. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. He took our pain and bore our suffering. This is not, I think it's not the best translation. Let me just read it in Hebrew for a second. Something is a bit strange here. Take a look. Isaiah 53. Verse 4. Okay. Yeah. Surely he took our pain and bore our suffering. It's not bore our suffering, it's he bore the suffering that we inflicted on him. That will be the right thing to say, the right translation. So this looked a bit strange to me. Yeah, he bore the suffering of that we inflicted to him. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. I don't see the pierced part, but okay. He was crushed for our iniquities. So it's not for this. Wow. Yeah, I knew there are all kinds of different translations are not amazing, but he was crushed for our iniquities. So it's not for, it's from our iniquities. Yeah, from our iniquities. It's definitely from our iniquities. Mechulal mipshayenu. Okay, from our iniquities he was crushed. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. Yeah, I see that maybe I should have prepared it in a slightly different way, because there are a lot of mistranslations here. I used a Christian translation that I usually use, the Bible Gateway, but I'll just let you know that there's a lot of differences from the Hebrew. Let's move forward. And by his wounds we are healed. Yeah. By his wounds we are healed. It's also not what exactly it says. Brought peace on. Yeah, we thought that by wounding him we will be healed. that would be a slightly better translation. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Let's continue. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Okay, so just in the Jewish thought, we're talking about a servant that is suffering under the nations, and they think that it's a good thing that they punish him and make him suffer because it heals something for them. It's like solving their social problems, their economic problems, whatever problems they have. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was punished. See that? Yeah, so it's not for, it's from the transgression of my people he was punished. That's 100%. So this is very, I see the it's a messianic chapter. We have to put that in mind. It speaks about the messianic era when the servant of God, something is exalted. But it's very Christological in this text, and when you read it in the Hebrew, there are a lot of differences. So in verse 9, for example, it says, "Mipesha ami negalamo," meaning not for the transgression of my people he was punished, but from the transgression of my people he was punished. Because of, they made him suffer. So it's not like the servant suffers for the other people, but he suffers from the other people. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Okay, so it goes on, and the main point that I want to convey. The main point that I want to convey is that we see now under in the state of Israel that Israel, historically speaking, encountered or clashed with the Muslim world in 48, 56, 67, 73, 70 even, 82. There's a lot of military clashes with the Arab world and the Muslim world. And I would say that since the 80s and 90s, since Hamas was established, and the colors of the battle is not just on the national level, meaning it's not just the national Palestinian movement, or in the 50s and 60s was the Arab national movement. It's not just that ideology that we were fighting against, which is a little more secular ideology. In the last 30 years, and almost 40 years, we're dealing more with the Islamic color, the Islamic world, okay, the Muslim world, in the Islamic ideology. That's what I'm really trying to say. And the battles the war that is basically now going on in Gaza, it's a religious war that we always knew that there is religious a sentiment, of course, underlying under it. That was the call for arm since the 1920s, a jihad against the Jews. But what is going on now is that we are witnessing the servant, or the suffering servant, meaning Israel, dealing with an aggression that is from the Muslim world and not from the Christian world. So that's why I want to bring this today. I'm sure we will prevail. There's tremendous suffering going on now, of course, in Israel. Many funerals, sadly. Many people are injured and wounded in different levels. But we have these prophecies. We have these prophecies that the kings of all these nations will shut their mouth, and then they will be surprised from the glory of that servant. Okay, So that's what I want to share with you. And Isaiah 52 and 53, very loaded chapters. As you can see, maybe I should have used it's a little more complicated. What I showed you is just the difference between the Christian version or the Christian translation and what I read in the Hebrew. I didn't mean if I wanted to actually analyze that, I should have prepared it in a different way, but I actually just wanted to read through the chapter. So if there is a question, if there are any questions, you're welcome. There were pogroms against the Jews in Israel. Pogroms, correct. Chris, I assume you mean pogroms. In Hebron, for example, in 1929, correct. Very true. From the transgression of my people, he was punished. From, correct. Is the correct translation? Yes. I still begs. I still beg the question. Who is my people? My people is the king speaking. Again, it's all this chapter is basically the speech of the foreign kings. So you have to read it in that. That's why I started with 52 and not just reading 53, because it's really what it says. All of a sudden, the kings are the one who speaks, and Isaiah put the words in their mouth. So it's one of the kings saying, "My people," I don't know, whatever people, we made them suffer. So he says, "My people had transgression against them." So I hope, Chris, it's understood. Do you think Israel will invade Gaza? Yes. Again, we don't have a choice. I really doubt that we won't. It's near impossible. Not just because of the military need for that, it's also because of the public sentiment is that we have to make Hamas disappear. We can't have another war in Gaza anymore. This has to stop. If it is the kings that says my people who speaks, when it is my servant. Not sure what the question is. The kings are speaking in these like I think 12 passages or so. 12, yeah.
But also in this passage where you say the kings speak, when you say the kings speak, then the whole passage, then also you would have said to say when the kings speak, and then they speak about Israel as my servant. You know what I mean?
No, the kings are not saying that Israel is their servant. God is saying that Israel is my servant.
No, just following the logic that you just, I try to follow your logic. So from the logic that I'm trying to follow, if I put this persons, the kings, as the ones that speak through the mouth of the prophet, then there are some passages, and you can, if you read the text, you could, and you say the whole thing is what the kings speak.
Yeah.
Then in that what the kings speak, it would seem the kings speak about Israel as my servant too.
Which verse, for example?
Well, I don't have it in front of me anymore, but as you said, you didn't bring the Hebrew.
Yeah, if I would bring the Hebrew, then it would be easier. But over here they shut their mouth in 52:15. Yeah. And kings will shut their mouths because of him, because of that servant, what they see that he's exalted. Okay. And then this is the king speaking. Okay. This is chapter 53 starts with that. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He, the servant, grew up before him like a tender shoot, etc., etc. Then they don't speak about Israel as their servant. They speak about him as a person that they harmed.
Well, when you go on, then would you say then they finish their speech with verse 9, or?
No, it's until the end, until verse 12.
So you say that that the king said it was the Lord's will to crush Israel and to cause Israel to suffer. That's what the king says. The kings say.
No, they basically kind of repent. Basically, they are saying we always made him suffer, but from again, this is the Christian translation, so it's more Christological. But verse 8, for example, it says it says in the Hebrew, from the transgression of my people, he was punished. Okay, meaning because of our transgression, we are the one who are wrong. We were violent towards him, and he was punished by us. That's essentially what they say. And by the way, it's not he that is punished; it's them were punished in the Hebrew. Lamo is plural. So anyway, it's pretty obvious that they're talking about people that were punished, and not, the servant is Israel, meaning it's people. It's a very interesting chapter, I must say. Yes, Mark?
Just be curious. I know you will use a Hebrew translation. I'm looking at the JPS translation of Isaiah 53:9. And it says, and they made his grave with the wicked and with the rich his tomb, although he had done no violence, neither was there any deceit in his mouth. So there it shows an actual his death, and that this who it's referring to. And I'm curious how you look at those scriptures. I know I have my own interpretation as a Christian and what that means. And then it goes on in verse 10, and it pleased the Lord to crush him. I'm just reading from the JPS, which is a little bit different translation from the NAS or the King James, certainly. And let's see. Then down in verse 11, who can bear the sins of another?
Wait, but we'll have to do it slowly.
Okay, I'll stay with you. I'll stay in verse. I'm just curious how you translate that.
Yeah, so verse 9, it says, Vaitan et Rashaim kivo, meaning they put his tombs with the wicked. They killed the servant, and they buried him with the wicked. Et ashir bamotav al lo chamas asa. Meaning they kind of look at him, they blame him for being rich. They blaming him for being rich. This is one way to understand it. They're blaming him for being rich or wealthy for no reason, because he acted in no violence and he didn't deceit. Let me just check that. All kinds of I don't know. I don't want to go to the philology of it, but yeah, he didn't deceit or act in violence, but they consider him a wealthy person that kind of exploited the poor. Maybe this is one of the interpretations. I don't think it's the right one actually, but this is at least what I see here. And
so just a suggestion. Obviously, I'm coming from a Christian viewpoint on these scriptures.
Sure.
Where the Messiah, if I can use that term, and that would be agreeable with you, that he had no sin in him, a perfect. You would assume the Messiah would be without sin, but he was put to death with the wicked. He was numbered with the wicked.
Yeah,
and then he was buried in a rich man's tomb.
It's a little hard to, again, from the Hebrew, it's a little hard.
And with the rich, his tomb. So, there's different ways you might interpret that. And he bare the sins of many. If you go on down to verse, and they're down in verse 11, the last part of it says, and their iniquities he did bear. And I'm wondering, who can bear the iniquities of another? Can I bear the iniquities of of someone else? Am I righteous enough
We're
to
reading verse
cover their
11, just
sins?
making sure.
I'm just curious down there at the end of verse 11.
Yeah, so
Nice.
verse 11, it says in the English, after he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Okay. In the Hebrew, it says, לרבים, sorry, יצדיק צדיק עבדי לרבים ועוונותם הוא יסבול, meaning he suffers their iniquities. See? He doesn't bear their iniquities, actually he suffers their iniquities. So again, I know it's a very loaded chapter. I just wanted to give you the Jewish reading of it, and in the context of the war, in the context of this clash that is going on since Israel was established, I wanted to use a chapter that many people are familiar with. That's yeah, but that's what it says in the Hebrew. He suffers their iniquities, doesn't bear their iniquities, or if he bears it, it doesn't bear them in, I guess, that's simply what it says. He suffers their sins or their iniquities. So yeah, that's this part. About the Messiah, by the way, it is a messianic chapter because it speaks about the messianic era when the servant is exalted, but at least in the Jewish thought, it doesn't speak about the Messiah. It speaks about the people of Israel. Again, the servant. There are many other chapters that speaks about a Messiah, but this one is messianic chapter, meaning speaking about the messianic era, but doesn't speak specifically about the Messiah. So this is again in the Jewish thought.
I was just trying to get your perspective from it. I have a different view of it.
Yeah, sure.
But I did want to get your perspective of how you see these scriptures. So that's an interesting take. So I thank you for that.
Welcome, of course. Hey, Paul.
Hello.
Busy with some
One
phone
of the
calls.
things that I love from Isaiah 52 is the happy feet on the mountains.
Oh yeah.
And you know, we Bible students make dual applications a lot of times to prophecy, and Isaiah 52 definitely you have to put it at the end of the age, and yet we see the application to a Jewish man at the beginning of the age as well, and it does seem like there's been two suffering servants from the time that Israel was cast off into all the nations, because you know there was a lot of suffering for the last 2,000 years. There's no doubt about that. And it was at the hands of so-called Christians. But you know who else suffered under those what we would call false Christians, are those that tried to support the Jews for the last 2,000 years, and who are still trying to support the Jews even today. So we like to look at the true followers of Jesus of Nazareth for the last 2,000 years as suffering together with the nation of the exiled nation of Israel. And now, since they're regathering, we also want to suffer with you. We want to be part of the suffering servant class, because we believe as Christians that Christ has many members. That we believe in a composite Messiah. That we believe that there is a head one man who did give his life as a ransom for all, but we believe that under that one man, there's many members that also suffer with him and also suffer with the natural people of Israel. So Bible students have a unique perspective that we don't believe, Itamar, you have to accept Jesus as your savior now to have any.
Yeah, I met you, Paul.
And we believe that I believe there is another application to the suffering servant besides Jesus of Nazareth. So it's because of the context of the second the time when what does it say in Isaiah 52? Announcing the good news that Hashem is king, that God has restored his people back to their land. So
yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
You have a lot of courage, Brother Itamar, to take Christians through those verses.
Again, because we're friends, I am not shy about just sharing the Hebrew. I didn't prepare it properly. I knew there are all kinds of differences, of course, between the Hebrew and the translations. I think Chris asked me about a certain verse. I'm not an expert on these translations. If I was aware to the differences, then I would probably prepare it better. But I'm aware of this translation, but I just wanted to share again this idea of the suffering servant. Okay, I'm going to, as we are doing these sessions, I want to share in this Bible study all kinds of passages that are could be relatable in this time, hard times that we're going through. And I thought about the suffering servant too, that it will be appropriate. And I know it's very important for Christians, and I just want to share the Jewish understanding of the scriptures here. Yeah, thank you again for joining, for tuning in, and for asking your questions. And don't worry about the suffering servant; it will be exalted, and this way or the other. And I mean, we will know better times. That's my point, really. So I know we are in the dark right now, but we're praying, and we have trust in God, and we'll go through this. And these sessions are very helpful for me, again, that I can keep teaching or keep conversing with people that are very dear to me. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you. Brother Itamar, I'm just going to put something in the chat.
Go ahead.
It's from Caroline Glick, who I know is conservative, but it might help anybody that wants to see the legality of what Israel is doing, and how they are not violating international law in what they're doing. In fact, they're going far beyond not violating international law. So this was a good program that I watched yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much. And Chris, I saw your message on the chat. I'm really not familiar with that because I'm just native Hebrew speaker, so I just read the text in Hebrew. So I'm not familiar with how other people learn it. I just know the King James version, maybe a few others, but I didn't go too deep into the translations to see the difference, who's more accurate, who's more. I'm not an expert with that. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. It was a bit longer than usual, but I thought it will be an interesting one. So all the best to you, and I hope to see you very soon, hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
Take care, guys. All the best.